We're continuing on Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim, and we are continuing on Birkot HaShachar, Siman Nun Hey, and we are discussing the halachot of when the minyan could be broken up to two different places and still be considered a minyan. And Seif Chaf, Maran writes, Hayu asara b'makom echad v'omrim kaddish u'kedusha. If you have 10 people in the same place, they are together, no questions asked, they're saying kaddish, they're saying kedusha, afilu mishe'eno imahem yachol la'anot. Even if you're not with them, you still could answer. You could be anywhere, and you're hearing them. They are a minyan, a legitimate minyan in one place that they are saying kaddish and kedusha. You could answer as long as you hear them. Ve'yesh omrim sh'tarich shelo yeh mafsik tinuf o akum. And here is where it becomes interesting. Maran brings a shita v'yesh omrim that this is given that between you and them there is no there is no avodat kochavim, there's no person that's oved avodat kochavim, idol worship, and or no tinuf, no dirtiness. In other words, if you have betakise, if you have tzo'ah, if you have dirtiness between you and them, then you cannot answer kaddish and kedusha with them. This is Maria Abuhav, the Maran brings in Bet Yosef in the name of Yerushalmi. Now, this becomes very, very much relevant when you talk about answering on a shidur hai. Many people around the globe listen to Rabbi Tzchak Yosef now. It used to be in my time, Chavo, but yeah, Lavyan. They have a shidur hai. They used to have it on Tuesday nights and Motzei Shabbat. I'm not sure if they still have it both or only is Motzei Shabbat. But then they say Kaddish. They say sometimes they say Stihot. Can you answer together with them? Now there are several questions to be asked and answered. There is a security delay of 3 seconds, so you're not really answering together with them. When you hear it happen, it's not actually when it's happening. And secondly, the argument that many Aharonim have on that is, well, between you in the United States of America and the Shiur in Yazdim is going to be many, many Akum and Tinofet. So can you still answer it while having so much things between you? Maran seems to bring this Yerushalmi in the name of Maria Abuhav, and that you shouldn't be doing it. Now, one could argue right away that this is Stam Yesh, right? So Yesh Mishe Omer. But it's not necessarily disagreeing with the Stam, is redefining it. It says you could do it, but there are those who say you can only do it when you don't have Akum and Tinofet in front of you. So let's read the Chafetz Chaim, says the Mishna Berurah, even if you're in a different domain, in a different house, even if you're legamri, rachok, you're completely far away. Once you have Shekhinah with these people, because there's minyan there, Shekhinah shruya b'nehem, ואז אפילו מחיצה של ברזל אינה מפסקת בין כל מי שרוצה לסלף עצמו עם אביב של השמיים. Once you have אביב של השמיים, even if it's a play on words, even a iron wall, an iron curtain cannot be wide between you and HaKadosh Baruch Hu when you have a minyan there. Hashochen betoch elu ha'asara. Okay, great. So, first and foremost, you see from the language of Mishna Berurah that in this manner, if you want, you could answer. Not that there is a hiyuv to answer, right? If you want, you are allowed to be mistaref with them to answer Kaddish and Kedusha, but there are those who say that you are really obligated to answer with them and to follow. This, of course, would be in Afkamina if you're sitting in a bit midrash and you're not part of the minyan. You hear Kaddish and Kedusha, you're doing your own thing. Do you have to answer? Or do you not have to answer? So again, Yaakov Yosef in Siman Nun Vav seems to indicate that there are many who hold that you should do it. But again, the language of the Mishna Berurah seems to indicate that you're not obligated to do it. just because you're here Kaddish, just because you hear Kedusha doesn't mean that you have to stop what you're doing and answer. If you're doing your own thing, you could continue doing your own thing. If you're learning in the side Bet Midrash, seems from the Mishna Berurah that you could continue learning if you don't want to answer. If you are interrupt your learning. From Yaakov Yosef would seem otherwise. So it says the Mishna Berurah, Yachol la'anot amen ואמן יהיה שם רבה, וקדושה וברכו, וכן יכול להוציא ידי חובתו בתפילה אם אינו בקי. So you could even be in your own home and you could be יוצא ידי חובה of תפילה with all those things that you need to be יוצא with. If you are not baki to daven yourself, if you're not well versed to daven yourself, ויש אומרים משמע דין זה לא פסיקה לה. And there are those who say, he says יש אומרים, Maran says יש אומרים, there are those who say that you have to do it. He brings the Maria Abuhav in the name of Yerushalmi. So the Mishna Berurah says something very interesting here. From the fact that Shulchan Aruch writes this in the language of there are those who say, Yesh Omrim, Mashma de din ze lo psikale. You see that Maran didn't have clarity on this din. Shulchan Aruch didn't have clarity on this din. V'chen mashma ma'arama b'siman ayin tet tzif alef. And if you take a look at later on in Siman Ayin Tet, you will see that the Rama also doesn't have it really clear. It doesn't really hold necessarily like this. Just like Magen Avraham writes. Magen Avraham makes a pshara. He says, Amen Yeshem Rabbah, Kedusha, no problem, that you're just saying psukim. Aval barechu lo yane. But saying Baruch Hashem Avorach L'olam Va'ed, that's already a dvarim shebikdusha. You should not answer that. Now, Kaf HaChaim writes that the fact that Maran brings this in the name of Yesh Omrim is not because it's not a halakha psuka in his hand, but this is the derech of Maran. This gets into a very deep concept of what Maran uses for conveying messages of halakha to us. When he says Yesh Omrim, sometimes Maran wants to tell you a halakha by mentioning it in the name of Yesh Omrim. Now, this is opening a very, very deep conversation because there's a general machloket when Maran has stam v'yesh. That really stems from the language of Mishnayot, the way Rebbe created the patterns of Mishnayot, but nevertheless, without getting into deeper concepts of backgrounds, there's a machloket with klalim of Maran Shulchan Aruch. There are many ba'alei klalim. There are those who say when Maran writes something as a halakha, so of course that's halakha. When Maran writes something as stam v'yesh, and the stam v'yesh are arguing, it's halakha like stam. And when he says two things in the name of Yesh Omrim, it means Yesh Omrim this and Yesh Omrim that, then Maran is concurring with the second Yesh Omrim. And there are those who say when Maran doesn't paskin like something, he's completely ignoring it. It's just bringing it to show kavod to that shita, but it's not paskining that way. Kaf HaChaim doesn't hold like that. Kaf HaChaim holds when Maran says Setam Yesh, is coming to tell you the Yesh Omrim is important. So even though that Ikar Halakha is like Stam, but if the Yesh Omrim is more Mahmir, you must be Mahmir, unless in a place that you stand to lose money, or if push comes to shove, it's difficult times, then you can rely on the Yesh Omrim because that's the Ikar Halakha. And Stam rather, because that's Ikar Halakha. But Maran wants you to be Mahmir like Yesh Omrim. And when the Yesh Omrim is more mekel, when the Yesh Omrim is more lenient, Maran is coming to teach you that Ikar Halakha is like Stam, of course, but push comes to shove, you could be mekel because there's this important shita that's lenient. Harav Ovadia does not side with this. Kaf HaChaim does. Harav Ovadia says no. When Maran brings Stam v'yesh, he is completely disregarding the yesh. He's just mentioning it to give kavod to that shita. That's it. It bears zero halachic weight. Halakha is completely like stam. And same is with yesh v'yesh. Halakha is ki yesh batra. and completely to disregard. Now, these are not Klalei Barzel. These are not set in stone. Klalim, each one of them have many exceptions to the rule, and that's why it has stayed as a very powerful machloket between Klalei Maran. You find many exceptions to each one of them. Now, this is not necessarily discussing that, because the Yesh is not disagreeing with the Stam. Stam says that if you have a minyan intact in one place, you, as an outsider, could answer, even if you're far away. And then Maran says, but there are those who say far away only is defining that. It's not arguing with it. It's defining. So the Mishna Berurah says, why is he saying it as Yesh Omrim, not paskening it? It's not two different shitas, it's one shita. Because it must be because Maran doesn't have clarity on this. Kaf HaChaim says, no. If you take a look around Shulchan Aruch, you will find many times that Maran brings a shita that he holds like in the name of Yesh Misha Omer or Yesh Omrim, because it's a dot that he found only in one place. So therefore he's paskening it in that specific language, right? And that's what Chacham Ovadia says also. Chacham Ovadia says this Yesh Omrim is not disagreeing with the Stam, he's just explaining it. So Maran is completely paskening like it. Why does it say Yesh Omrim? Because he found it in the name of Mari Abu Havin Shalmi. He didn't find anyone else, so that's why he says it like that. Now, the Ben Ish Chai, and this last piece that we mentioned right now, that the Mishna Berurah said that you should answer Yeheshem Rabbah and Kedusha, but you should not answer Barechu. The Ben Ish Chai says, and Kaf HaChaim also follows, that you should not answer anything. They're mahmir. Ben Ish Chai and Kaf HaChaim say, if you are in this scenario, you should not answer at all. Because again, Maran brought this as something that maybe he's not sure, and so on and so forth. So he says, don't answer even Amei Yeshem Rabbah, don't even answer Kedusha. And they add that tinuf, dirtiness, or an akum, ena mafsikim ela kshe'oneh nimtza bereshut aheret. It only divides if you are standing in a different domain altogether. Not when you're standing in the same reshut and there is, an oved avodah zarah in there. And therefore, if you have an oved avodah zarah that enters the Bet Knesset, even those who are standing between the Hazan and, they're standing in a situation that the oved avodah zarah is between them and the Hazan, still could answer Amei Yeshem Rabbah, Kedusha, and all of that. Chacham Ovadia also concurs like this, like the Ben Ish Chai as well. And when you hear Dvarim Shebekdusha on telephone, right, or on a live broadcast is much more relevant right now. Zoom, you're in shiur and they're saying Kaddish at the end of the shiur. It happens all the day, especially in COVID. This became increasingly more relevant, and now still a lot of it has been left over. We have a lot of Zoom shiurim, and at the end there's Kaddish, or there's the Shidur High, the live broadcast of different shiurim, that there are tefillot and Kaddishas afterwards. So Chacham Ovadia says that even though that probably between you and where the shiur is happening, you have avodah zarah, you have tinofet, you have bathrooms, you have all those things, you're still allowed to answer with it. That's a Chacham Ovadia, because you don't see the tinofet. You're sitting in a beautifully cleaned, beautiful, nice setup with midrash or shul, and you're listening to a different shiur in a different place, or you're in your home and listening to a shiur. Even though that between you there are dirty places or avodah zarah, when you don't see them, it's no problem. Therefore, you're allowed to answer. But Chacham Ben Zion Abba Shaul, for instance, he says that even if you have mechitzot and you don't see the oved avodah zarah, you don't see the tinofet, still you would be machmir, and that's what Mordechai Eliyahu paskin also. So here you kind of have this machloket whether or not you could answer Kaddish and Kedusha over telephone, or cell phone, you hear something, or you're listening to a live broadcast, can you answer? Chacham Ovadia will tell you betach. You could do it, no problem. Rabbi Zera will tell you don't do it. Rabbi Chayahu will tell you don't do it. And all of that stems from this halacha, right? Now, this causes the Mishna Berurah to be a little bit more relevant. So even though that we said Chafetz Chaim and Chacham Ovadia, they all say that Maran was completely sure about this, but Chafetz Chaim is no lightweight either. Chafetz Chaim held that this halacha was not clear, so therefore, for like Maran says, Kaddish and Kedusha you could answer. Baruchu maybe it's a little bit less. So here you have kind of like a Safek Sfeka. On one hand, you have Safek, maybe halacha is like Magen Abraham, who says this in the Shita of Rema in Siman Ayin Tet, that Kaddish and Kedusha you could do, right? And maybe, even if you don't say like that, halacha should be like Chacham Ovadia, that anyways here, the hefsek that you have should not really be that important, right? So therefore, because you don't see them, and therefore you could answer everything. So certainly by a regular Kaddish, which is normally the case, is you hear Kaddish and you want to answer, that would be a stronger case for Chacham Ovadia. Again, now that we're dealing with all these shitas, which one you would be allowed to follow, one would certainly be able to rely, would have what to rely on to do like Chacham Ovadia, given that for a different reason, Mishna Berurah seems to say the same thing based on that Magen Avraham. Okay, let's do one more. Shelo yehem ve'afilu amen enu yachol la'anot l'de'ah zu. According to this shita of Mari Avuhav, based on Yerushalmi, you can't even answer amen. Forget about Dvarim Shebikdusha, you can't answer anything. Tinuf, Retzono Lomar, what's considered dirtiness? Afilu hu meruhak mimenu yoter ma'arba'amot. Even if you are distant from it more than the distance of 4 amot, which again, we have come across this a little bit before. We're going to see some more of it in later on in Siman Ayin Hey and so on. Even if you're farther from it from 4 amot, the be'alma mutar, that usually would be mutar when you turn your face away. Okay, remember we said that if your mahane is kadosh, mahane is 4 amot around you, and you're not looking at dirtiness, you just turn away your face, that would be mutar. Says the Mishna Berurah, over here, according to them, would be asur, even if it's more than 4 amot. Because it is stopping, it's blocking between you and the minyan, that dirtiness. So therefore, it's not a halachot of machanecha kadosh, it's a halachot of you attaching yourself to them. And if dirtiness is in the middle, it's not something that's considered respectful, so therefore you cannot do it. It's dividing between you and the Shekhinah, and it causes the Shekhinah not to be able to connect to the Shekhinah, and therefore Shekhinah is not shoreh with you, even though that you're listening to them, and therefore you should not do it. Akum, Ratzono Lomar, Avodat Kochavim or Obed Kochavim. That's, if you have an idol or an idol worshiper, same thing. You cannot do it. To which the Kaf Chaim says, and Chacham Ovadia as well, that even a woman that's Obed Avodat Kochavim, that's idol worshipping individual, it would be considered a hefsek. Doesn't make a difference, male or female. And then there's a discussion further about what the level of Avodat Kochavim would be in this particular case. But when you want to say Birkat Ilanot, for instance, and you have Avodah Zarah in front of you, imagine we had this like literally in Westwood, the Ilanot that we had. You would relate to that. The Birkat Ilanot that we had was literally across the street from us. There was one of the largest churches that you have in the United States of America, and that was literally like across the street from the Ilanot. So if you stood in the sidewalk facing the Ilanot, you would be also facing this thing with a massive statue of Avodah Zarah on top of it, basically, right? So do you say that or not? That becomes, that's one of the only brachot. You have this also in Birkat HaLevana, if you're outside and so on. But when you say Birkat HaIlanot, it becomes a little bit of the question if you have Oved Avodah Zarah or Avodah Zarah in front of you. So then you have to be careful a little bit. Maybe you turn your face away, you do it in a way that you're not facing actual idols. Again, people who go to tours of especially Eastern things of India and whatnot. I'm not sure if the China. You have a lot of them coming up. You have temples all around the place, and that's like real Avodah Zarah. You have real Avodah Zarah. You have 700 cults of Avodah Zarah over there. So you could pick your choice of what not to be in front of, but probably will include all of them. So that's something important to keep in mind as well when saying Birkat HaLevana and Birkat HaIlanot. We'll continue this in the days to come.